One, so let's get started. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's Health, Wellness, and Dr. Nugent call on AO. For those that don't know me, my name is Poppy, and I am your marketing lead here at Mannatech. And today I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Nugent to the call. So, Dr. Nugent is Mannatech's Global Wellness Director and Chairman of the Global Scientific Advisory Board. Dr. Steve Nugent, who has more than 45 years of experience in the area of integrative medicine. He has tested more than 6,000 dietary supplement products and has formulated more than 100. He is internationally recognized as an expert in his field and has been teaching doctors for more than 30 years. He is Mannatech's most requested speaker worldwide, so we're always very lucky to have him here with us. He has earned multiple degrees, graduating with top honours at both undergraduate and graduate levels, and his areas of studies include integrative medicine, health and wellness psychology, leadership psychology, organizational psychology, nutrition science, and business administration. Dr. Nugent has served as president of the International Association of Complementary Medicine and is president of the American Naturopathic Medical Association. I'm very tongue-tied this morning. And is a professional member of the American College of Nutrition. He was awarded the Servants' Heart Award by Mannatech Associates in 2007, and Dr. Steve Nugent was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, served his country with honor as a United States Marine, and was a resident of Texas for nearly 2 decades. And now it's time to pass you over to Dr. Nugent. So thank you and welcome this morning.
Yes, well, thank you, Poppy, for that introduction. And good morning to everyone in Australasia. It's early evening where I'm broadcasting from. I'm traveling. I'm in a temporary residence right now. The lighting is as good as it's going to get. And in fact, it may get worse as the sun is continuing to go down. So, just so all of you know, if I start to black out of your screen, that it's not you, it's the Earth's revolution. So that's what's going on.
I'm sure we'll
Okay,
be fine.
so I think I'm going to do the share screen thing, and hopefully I will select the right one there. There we go. Um, I'm thinking maybe that's not showing up properly. Or Poppy, are you seeing the slides on your end?
We can see Zoom. It looks like it's you're in Chrome.
I don't know why. We should be seeing this. There we are. All right. All this
Oh yeah.
high-tech stuff. Okay, thank you, Poppy. All right, folks, we are going to be talking today about Ambrotose AO. And many of you who listen to my trainings on a regular basis, you've probably heard me say things like, it's a great product with an unfortunate name. And I will come back to the unfortunate name and I'll tell you what Ambrotose AO is and what it is not as we get towards the end of this particular training this morning. So here we are starting, and you see I've just put AO on there because I think the name of the product should simply be AO because Ambrotose AO confuses everyone. I will explain that, as I say, as we get further through this particular training. Well, as always, I want to let you know what to expect during this training. So I'll talk a little bit in this training about the history and about the need for this product. Why do you even need a product like AO? And I'll explain some of the science behind that and the science behind the product itself. It's got a very interesting history, the science, the steps that we went through to make what I feel is the greatest antioxidant product on planet Earth right now. And I say right now because science marches on, and who knows what will happen next year or the year after that. But right now, the best there is. I will, of course, always talk to you about ingredients and benefits and uses that are associated with those benefits, and of course, the features of the product as we move forward. So that's what to expect in this training. Some of you might remember I did a tour of Australasia, and I can't remember how many years ago it was now, but in this particular tour, I requested that I train on only one product, and the product I trained on was Ambrotose AO. And at the time, I told the general manager at the time, Mr. George Howden, I really miss George. And I told George that you got to trust me on this, George. I want you to bring cases of Ambrotose AO to each live event in each city, and trust me, you will sell them all. And that is what happened. And that's because I was able to concentrate on one product rather than trying to say a little bit about 10 products. I was able to concentrate on one product. People got it and they said, wow, that's a product I need. And of course, the sales did that. And it had been up until that time, for those of you who are business builders on this call, up until that time, and I'm not sure how it's been since then, but it was the single largest month for product sales up till that date. So obviously that was a pretty good way to approach it. All right, so that's a little bit about, tiny bit about the history of the product, but I'm going to give you a little more about the history of how we developed this product, the steps that we took to make it the greatest antioxidant product in the world. Well, science shows us that we need more antioxidant today than ever before in history. Now, you might say that's a pretty big statement. How can you make a statement like that? Well, there are so many sciences now and so many subdivisions in sciences. But one of the things that scientists can do now is they can take ice cores and they can drill down through the ice cores and they can go back to capture what was in the atmosphere 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. So they know what was actually in the air at the time. And then we can compare that to the air today. Just by air alone, there has been no time in human history when we needed antioxidant more than we do today. And air is only part of the issue. We will talk more about that. So, what is an antioxidant and what is oxidative stress? All right. In the simplest possible terms, all of you know what rust is. Everyone's seen rust. Rust on metal is oxidative stress on metal. Now I know you'll say, well, you're not made of metal, blah, blah. Okay. No, you're not. But that same process is what happens to the cells in your body when your body is attacked by things called free radicals. The free radicals are cells which are out of balance. Everyone has seen the picture of the atom. You see this very nice, elliptical process going around the center of the atom. You see the elliptic uh, orbit around it, and it's nice and it's balanced. Now imagine if one of those electrons, one of those things that is making the elliptical part of the orbit, imagine it's missing. Well, now this thing is a radical. Now it's moving radically and erratically all over your bloodstream. And it's bumping into things, it's damaging things. It's like a bull in the china shop. So that's the easiest, simplest way. Now it is actually more complicated than that, of course. But when you're talking to a person who doesn't want to go to school and earn a bachelor's degree to understand something, I think it's a good, easy way to explain this for people. So how do you balance out that radical now that can't maintain an orbit because it's now an unstable molecule? It's just shooting all over like the bull in the china shop. You do it by replacing an electron. Now, an antioxidant vitamin, like vitamin E, like vitamin C, like vitamin A, these have extra electrons. They can spare an electron. So the one that's out of orbit, that can't stay in a normal, nice, smooth orbit, it now meets and a spare electron is lent to it, and now it's stable. And now you have two molecules that are in stable orbit, which are actually good for your body. Now, that's again kind of an oversimplification, but that is essentially what happens. So then you need things like vitamin A, C, and E. Absolutely. But you need more than that. Science has learned a great deal about oxidative stress and antioxidants. And one of the things that we've learned is that you also need things called phytochemical antioxidants. So the vitamins we've talked about, but you also need phytochemicals. Now, phyto is a derivative of an ancient Greek word that means plant. So plant antioxidants, plant chemicals. So why should you eat your broccoli and your cauliflower and your onions and your tomatoes and the list goes on? Because you need those antioxidant phytochemicals in them. Of course, you also need the fiber because it's good for your health. The vitamin mineral content in vegetables is so small, it's negligible. But the antioxidant phytochemical, oh, that's different. That's special. That's important. And we'll come back to that as we proceed in this training. So then, what we want to do is to help your body compensate to try and help it to cope with today's oxidative stress. Now, you can get yourself pretty confused by going on the internet unless you have a thorough scientific understanding of free radical oxidative stress. You may be doing yourself a disservice by trying to look at it too much on the internet because of all of this stuff out there. Some of it's correct and some of it's not. And some of it's driven strictly by money. And some of it's driven by people who want to attack natural supplements. And oh gosh. So we're just going to stick with the science on this particular training. Okay. Well, I do anyways on all my trainings. So you can create free radicals. In fact, you do create free radicals by breathing. That's right, just by breathing. But your body is designed to compensate for that level of free radical stress. You create free radical oxidative stress when you exert your body physically. And the more you exert your body physically, the more free radical oxidative stress you cause. Which is why the more physically active you are, the more antioxidant your body requires to stabilize those molecules and stay healthy. Remember, I want you to have this image in your mind. Think about the cells of your body rusting. Okay, that's the closest I can get for you. And it does kind of look like that underneath the microscope. It's not a good thing. Well, back in 1995, I told you we'd do a little bit of history, and so here we are. And I know many of you have heard me talk about this before, and it's worth talking about again. It's important to this scenario for oxidative stress. In 1995, the very first government-sponsored human study was done on oxidative stress and food, on diet. Very first one. It was done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture because they had tons of money to spare, more than other governments had. And what they found, they were surprised to find that people were not getting sufficient antioxidant phytochemical in their diet. They were surprised because every doctor is told, and then every doctor tells every person on every news program, and then every person on every news program tells every citizen, oh, if you eat right, that's all you need to do. You just need to eat right. Sorry, that's not enough. It's not true anymore. Now, if this would have been, say, 1930, no problem. You eat a good diet, you don't have to think about anything else. But it's not 1930, is it? And what the scientists found by doing this human study, they did something called serum ORAC. What is serum ORAC? This serum means blood. ORAC is an abbreviation. It stands for oxygen radical absorption capacity. And that is the potential for any molecule to neutralize the harmful effect of a free radical. That's basically what it means. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of companies out there selling junk, I mean, literally junk, that does nothing for your health, that does nothing for oxidative stress, and they're making billions of US dollars per year. And they use the word ORAC, they throw that word around all over the place, and they have no studies to support what they say. I'm going to talk about 3 human studies to support what I'm saying today, because I want you to know the best antioxidant on planet Earth based on human serum ORAC testing is Mannatech's AO. No question, no question, no contest. There's not even a close second. Well, so in 1995, these scientists at the US Department of Agriculture, they found out that people were getting so little phytochemical antioxidant as well as vitamin antioxidant in their diet that they said, well, from now on, we're going to recommend between 5 and 7 servings of fresh, not canned, not frozen, but fresh fruits and vegetables for every adult. Well, this test was repeated several times. And by the time it got to the year 2012, and by the way, each year it got worse. So by the time they got to the year 2012, this had risen to as much as 13 servings per day. Now, folks, it's just realism here. I'm a realist. I can tell you to eat 13 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables a day, but most of you aren't going to do it. I mean, that's just reality. But I could say to you, can you take 2 little capsules per day? Most of you could do that. Well, stay tuned for the results on that one. Now, I wrote a book back in 2004, and then a second edition of that book in 2006 called How to Survive on a Toxic Planet. And part of my research was looking into the chemicals in our air, in our water, in our food, and the connection between those chemicals and human health and the apparent decline in human health over time. And at that time, the research showed that there had been 75,000 chemicals, a little over that amount, that were made since the year 1930. Those chemicals did not exist before 1930. That's the beginning of synthetic chemistry, the 1930s. Well, 75,000 chemicals is enough. But as I did more research just a few years ago, it was about 3 years ago, I found that there are now more than 330,000 chemicals that have been introduced into our environment since 1930. 330,000. The number grows every year. Now, I don't care where you live and what your eyes tell you. The majority of these synthetic chemicals cannot be seen by the human eye. They're completely invisible to the human eye. They cannot, the overwhelming majority of them, you cannot smell with your sense of smell. You cannot detect them with the human sensory system. Why is this? Because they don't belong on this planet. They are synthetic to this planet. They are alien to this planet, if you will. And that's why your sensory system, which was designed to detect natural things that naturally belong on planet Earth, well, you can't detect these things because they don't belong. All right. Now you say to yourself, well, and I love this. And folks, don't get me wrong on this. All of you in New Zealand who know me, you know I love your country. You know I do. And you know I love visiting there and I miss it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful country. But I can't tell you how many times I have talked to somebody from New Zealand who says, oh, well, there could be pollution in America, but there's certainly no pollution in New Zealand. Look how beautiful it is. Well, I have bad news for you. These chemicals exist everywhere on planet Earth. There is nowhere to hide, nowhere. And they are found in snow, in air, in ice, in water, in the tissues of animals we consume. They're found on plants and in plants. Pesticides, as an example. Pesticides are always a little bit sticky. They're always have an oil basis to them. And why? Because, well, when they're sprayed on the plants, the idea is to make sure they stick on the plants so that when an insect comes up, it will be repelled by it, it'll go away. Well, those pesticides don't seem to break down. It was in the 1970s that the US government had enough study on one of the worst pesticides, and I should say one of the most effective pesticides, very effective in killing particularly mosquitoes, but other uh, insects as well. And they found that this was actually causing severe illness in humans. So the US government said, we are not going to use this pesticide ever again in the US. But guess where the pesticide's made? In the US. And it's still sold all over the planet. Now, the people that make that pesticide, and I will get in trouble if I mention the name of it, so I can't mention the name of it, but the people who make that pesticide, they told the US government back in 1977, I think it was, not to worry. This pesticide breaks down into its elemental molecules in just a matter of about 5 years, no problem. Except it doesn't. In fact, the stuff that was sprayed in 1970 can still be found completely intact all over the world and can be found in places like the South Pole and the North Pole and in the tissue of penguins and in the tissue of fish, and the list goes on. Okay. Folks, we live in the 21st century. I wish that we lived in a beautiful, pristine environment, an environment similar to what existed on planet Earth in the early 1800s when things were so beautiful, when you could drink from a stream and know that you were drinking clean water and never worry about it. Well, you can't do that now. And to compound the problem, for those people who say, again, going back to, oh, well, if I just eat the proper diet, I'll never have to worry about anything. Sorry, I have some very dear friends who eat near perfect diets and have still become very ill. It's the world we live in, my friends. So I want you to eat the best diet you can eat. Absolutely. I want you to go out of your way to always choose the best possible food, but understand that food alone in the 21st century is simply not enough. Things have changed, things are different. And in a human blood study that was done in 2002, and these medical doctors were very surprised because they had been taught what all doctors are taught. If you eat right, you don't need supplements because if you eat right, you get everything. Well, you don't. And this study, so they drew the blood of human volunteers, checking for vitamins, just vitamins, and they found that the majority of people did not have sufficient vitamin from diet alone. And their words, those are not my words, those are their words from their study on the screen in front of you right now. It appears prudent for all adults to take vitamin supplements. That was 2002. Things are not getting better. not getting better. Now, I showed this slide recently in a training for Australasia, in fact, and there was an interesting question afterwards, which I was kind of tired because it was, again, it was evening for me, and I'd already done a very long day. And so I'm going to make a comment on that because I want people to understand. Too often the human mind will focus on one small thing and then miss the rest of the picture. Now, I want you to take a good close look at this chart and focus. I have highlighted vitamin C and thiamine, which is vitamin B1. But let's look at vitamin C for a moment. Okay. If you take vitamin C, fresh vitamin C, so you've got, I don't know, a tomato, an orange, something with vitamin C in it, and you take that and you freeze it, studies show that you'll lose about 30% of the vitamin C content. If you dry it, like in a food dryer, about 80% of the vitamin C will be lost. If you cook it, about 50% of the vitamin C will be lost, and so on. So what I want you to see is that you are simply in food preparation and food storage losing vitamin. So start with the best food you can possibly start with. Do the best food preparation process you can do, but understand that whatever it said on the food label of the product you bought, once you've done any kind of heating or freezing or drying, you are going to lose some of that content. You're not going to get that full content. Try and factor that into your daily allowance, if you will. Okay. But one of the questions that came up after that last training, someone said, well, how do you process yours? And I think what she was thinking was that it goes right from, let's say, a tomato as an example, or a tomato, as you would say there, and that is taken directly from that and then put right into the supplement, and that's not the way it works. So if your supplement, whatever it is that we're talking about, let's say it calls for 50 milligrams of vitamin C. If we have started our process of extraction, and we do in almost all of our extraction processes, we do a dry freeze, or I should say a dry vacuum process. So it vacuums out fluid versus heating it out, okay, which preserves more. But the idea here is if the formula calls for 50 milligrams of active vitamin C, you will get 50 milligrams of active vitamin C, even if we have to go through 200 milligrams to get there. So all you need to worry about in terms of a supplement is what does the label tell you is in it. That's all you need to worry about with a Mannatech supplement for sure. And then food is different. That's what we talked about in this process. So we will move on. So your body is an organic machine, as you've heard me talk about so many times. And the more stress your machine is under, the more fuel it requires. That's simple common sense. 67 countries right now on planet Earth, and there are more than 190 countries. And as I always mention, I can never be sure from one month to another how many countries are because there's always coups and revolutions, and I just can't get over the fact that human beings have to do that to themselves all the time. But it's a reality. It happens. So more than 190 countries for sure. 67, those governments have said, we are now going to require certain vitamins and certain minerals be put into food that our population is consuming. Why would they say that if there was already enough of those nutrients present? Well, they wouldn't. Okay, so that's fairly obvious. Let's talk now about the science behind AO. AO, what a cool product this is. We at Mannatech, and I am now the last, they like to say the last man standing. I'm not sure if I like that or not. but I'm the last member of the original science team at Mannatech that was put together back in 1995. And I remember everything that we were going through so well. We were looking at that original study from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we were looking at all of those phytochemicals that are identified, all of those plant chemicals, which are not a vitamin, not a mineral, but their own product category. We're looking at all of these and we're thinking, okay, which vegetables and fruits do we need to look at as sources for these phytochemicals to make the best and most complete antioxidant product that anyone has ever seen before? I mean, anybody can say, here, take some vitamin C, it's an antioxidant. And it is, but that doesn't have all the other phytochemicals, does it? No, we wanted to have one that was the most complete, the most powerful, one that could stand up to the most powerful scientific test, which is called serum ORAC that I mentioned before. And we began to do our research. We spent almost 4 years of laboratory study, almost 4 years. We were testing so many things. We tested everything that we could find in the medical literature, everything in the science literature, everything in even folk literature. We were doing so many tests that we actually had to take volunteers from a local university. These were doctoral candidates, students who were studying for their doctorates in chemistry or biochemistry or something like that, to work in our lab and help us with the tests because we had so many tests to do. It was an astounding amount of tests that we did, again, for almost 4 years. Now, finally, we arrived at a formula that we thought, based on laboratory testing, would be the best formula ever in a human being. But the only way to prove that, of course, was to do a human test. And so we embarked upon our first human clinical trial using serum ORAC. Again, serum means blood. So we were drawing the blood of the volunteers, and we also took urine samples, by the way, from the volunteers. We did this every Wednesday. I remember I hated those Wednesdays. And we did this every Wednesday until we could complete this study. And the study showed us that based on serum ORAC, that is the activity, the antioxidant activity in the blood, what was going on, what was best, what was giving the best results. We were so astounded at the end of the first human clinical trial that some of us were beginning to think maybe we made a mistake somewhere in our mathematics or something. Now, keep in mind, this blood was drawn and the urine samples were taken, and they were all put in containers given to medical lawyers to safeguard this material to make sure it wasn't touched by anyone, no tampering, going to the laboratory, which was an offsite laboratory, not ours. So people couldn't say, oh, Mannatech just fudged the figures, right? So we went to all that trouble and all that expense. And then the data was reported back to us. Well, we were astounded by the first test, and we decided to do a second human clinical trial. The second human clinical trial showed us the same levels, almost identical, as the first trial. And then we did a third trial, but this time we added a lot of cigarette smokers because cigarette smoking is the number one source of oxidative stress that any human being can do to themselves. This, by the way, includes secondhand smoke if you have to breathe the smoke from someone else who is smoking. Okay. But that's not the only source. We decided to do that. And we learned a little bit more about oxidative stress during that process. We learned that the stress, the oxidative stress on the body of a cigarette smoker was almost 300% higher than that of a non-smoker. So we found that to be very interesting. So here's what we found. One capsule, one 500 milligram capsule of Ambrotose AO, which really should just be called AO, antioxidant, but 500 milligram capsule taken twice daily raised serum ORAC, blood ORAC protection, raised that protection by 37.4%. 5 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables doing the same human blood test raised protection in the blood by only 13%. Now, is it good to have fresh fruits and vegetables? Of course it is. We want you to do that. Is it enough? Well, it seems it's not enough. Now look at the value here. One 500 milligram capsule taken twice a day, so 2 capsules of Ambrotose AO, raising protection by 37.4%, 5 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables, raising protection by about 1/3 that amount. Which one's the obvious value? Which one's easier to do? Yes, eat the best food you can eat, absolutely. Always make sure you're making the best food choices. Do the best food preparation that you can do. But keep in mind that you're going to need more, according to the science, than your diet's going to be providing you. And the environment is not going to get cleaner. I don't care. I see some of these companies and I get so mad because I know that they are not being truthful with the public and they're just doing it to make their stock prices go up. And they say, oh, we're green, we care, and we're doing things to change the planet. Really? Show me some evidence of that. The stats don't show me the evidence of that. Our planet's not getting cleaner, folks. And the human population continues to grow. More people, more pollution, more waste. It's not a good situation. Can you take 2 500 milligram capsules a day, one in the morning, one in the evening? You can. It's easy. And it's surprisingly inexpensive. So, summary, Ambrotose AO capsules. This is an antioxidant that has no second best. There's no formula out there that even comes close to what AO can do based on all of the studies I've seen. We've done 3 human clinical trials. So we're not just blowing smoke here, folks. This is human scientific study, blood studies, actual living, circulating blood from living human beings. We're not talking about a finger stick. We're not talking about a petri dish. We're not talking about chemicals in a test tube. We're talking about what's going on inside of your body, in your blood. That's what we're talking about here. Three times we've done that. I defy any company on this planet to show me they have better science than us because I know they can't. At least not yet. We'll see what happens in the future. But right now, we are still the champions. And we have both fat soluble and water soluble antioxidants. Now, these companies that talk to you about having an ORAC value, and they say, oh, our ORAC value is 50,000, 100,000, whatever it is. They're doing a chemical test in a test tube to see how those chemicals fluoresce. And then what they say is, well, the brighter the fluorescence, the higher the ORAC protection unit. Well, there's several problems with that. First of all, you have to prove that against a human blood study, which it hasn't been proven against or tested against. And then the other thing is, only water-soluble antioxidants will fluoresce. Fat-soluble antioxidants do not fluoresce. You need both fat and water-soluble. Vitamin E is fat soluble. Vitamin A is fat soluble. Okay? You also need the phytochemical antioxidants. All of those things that come from the vegetables and the fruits that you should be eating in massive quantities. I mean, for you to keep up with the amount of antioxidant phytochemical from vegetables and fruits that you should have every day, you would have to be a ruminating quadruped. You'd have to be a cow. You'd have to eat all day long. You can't do that. It's not practical. But you can take 2 capsules each day. That's easy to do. Now, the TGA, these are the TGA approved claims as you're talking to other folks about this product. Now, first of all, it's registered as a medicine. So, number one, to maintain or support general health and well-being. Obviously, oxidative stress is going to affect your general health and well-being, that's for sure. You want to reduce your free radicals formed in the body. Antioxidants can do that. I've given you a kind of oversimplified version of how that works. Maintain your immune support. Obviously, huge part of this. Very huge. And folks, as always, as I say on every training that we do, make sure that you are not talking about any kind of serious diseases in connection with the sale of any of our products. You make sure you're not doing that. Okay. Well, as you know, when I do the ingredient part, this is educational, not promotional training. For those of you who think you know enough already, well, I guess you can make your own choices, but I hope everyone stays through the ingredients to learn a little about it. Now, I talked to you about those phytochemicals. The Australian TGA requires that everything be listed in its scientific plant name. Okay. And a lot of people look at these and they say, what the heck is Allium sativum? What is that? It's garlic. All right. So here on this slide, I've made it simple for you. So onion and garlic and pineapple, vitamin C is obvious, uh, turnips, and different kinds of cruciferous. The cruciferous vegetables are very high in certain phytochemical antioxidants that are extremely important to your health. So cauliflower and cabbage and Brussels sprouts, all that stuff that gives you gas, right? Uh, well, and if you're having gas from them, then you need enzymes to help you break them down better. All right. Green tea, papaya, and carrots, of course. The carrots are providing beta carotene. In addition to that, lycopene from tomatoes, super important. And the tocopherols from vitamin E. Quercetin. Quercetin is hugely important as a flavonoid antioxidant. And some of you have heard of the cockadoo plum. Well, yes, we're still using the cockadoo plum from Australia as a source of vitamin C. And of course, grape skin extract is another source of a different type of antioxidant phytochemical. So here is a product that could help you to support your immune health. And you see, I've written the various indications next to each of these. So ascorbic acid is another way of saying vitamin C. And for those of you who've been given the wrong information about this, let me give it to you scientifically again. Ascorbic acid is the scientific name for vitamin C. It's not the scientific name for synthetic vitamin C. It's the scientific name for vitamin C, whether it's natural or synthetic. It's still going to be the same name, okay? So ascorbic acid, again, quercetin, which is super important. And so you can see this whole list for immune health, for cardiovascular health, anti-inflammatory support, antioxidant protection, gut and metabolic support. All of these things are potentially balanced, supported by these ingredients in Ambrotose AO that come from these various vegetables and fruits. By the way, if you're speaking with a U.S. associate In the US, you cannot use the word anti-inflammatory. In the rest of the planet, you can use the word anti-inflammatory. It's quite annoying when I'm doing trainings in the US that I can't say that obvious and important term, but you can say it in Australasia. Also, there are glycans, and some of you recognize these as being in something called ambritose, particularly in the base formula ambritose complex, which is my favorite of all of the ambritose products that have been created throughout our history. And those glycans are in it and more, but they're all there. How do you take it? Well, it's pretty easy. You take it with or without food. Either way is fine. Because I'll always have associates who will say to me, well, it said to take it before food, and I forgot to take it before food, so I just didn't take it. No, shame on you. You make sure that you take your AO, 1 capsule, twice daily. Make sure you do that. Very, very important. It's easy to do, very easy. It contains naturally sourced ingredients, free from gluten, dairy, and artificial colors and artificial preservatives, and it is vegan friendly for our vegans who are tuned in. Ambritose AO, what it is and is not. This is important stuff because this has been a problem ever since it was named Ambritose AO. It shouldn't be called that, but it is. And our legal department, always, every time I bring it up in a meeting, let's change the name of this. Let's call it AO, or in some way call it what it is. It's an antioxidant. And I always get back from the legal department. They always say, but we've got a lot of mileage on the trademark Ambritose AO, and if we change that, we lose that mileage on the trademark. I don't know. I'm not a legal person or a marketing person, but what I do know is that if somebody thinks they can take all of the ambritose they need with 2 capsules of ambritose AO, they're not going to take their ambritose. And folks, it doesn't work. It doesn't work mathematically. In fact, yesterday, I got from a major presidential leader who asked me the obvious. And I say obvious because you can read the label, folks. There's no magic here. So on the label, it'll tell you how much of this and how much of that is in there. Now, our studies indicate that you should be taking 4 grams of ambritose powder per day. Why does ambritose powder come in a big jar, tub, whatever you want to call it? It's called different things in different countries. Let's use the word container. Okay. So why does this container of powder, why does it come that way? Because you'd have to take a zillion capsules to equal 4 grams. And it's ridiculous. So it comes in a container so that you can take your 4 grams daily using the little scoop that comes inside. Okay, it's pretty easy to do that. So ambritose AO is not an ambritose replacement. It is not. It's an antioxidant. Well, why did you call it ambritose? Well, I didn't name the darn thing. Okay, I would have never called it ambritose AO, but it was called that because each 500 milligram capsule contains approximately, not precisely, but approximately 300 milligrams of ambritose powder. But mixed in the ambritose powder is all of our antioxidant vegetable powder as well. So is 300 milligrams twice daily equal to 4 grams a day? Nope. Simple math says no, it's not. So ambritose AO is not an ambritose replacement. Is it good to have the extra ambritose? Well, that ambritose is there on purpose because we found that our ambritose product actually enhanced the function of our antioxidant blend. That's what makes up the rest of the capsule, the antioxidant blend. And we found that it enhanced it. So instead of using rice powder or some kind of filler, we used an active. We used ambritose because it made the product work even better. So that is ambritose AO, the antioxidant product, not an ambrotose replacement. So then what is it? It's the best antioxidant supplement in the world based on human serum ORAC clinical studies, based on human blood studies in living, breathing human beings, not finger pricks, not petri dishes, not test tubes full of chemicals. What happens inside of the human body? That's what serum ORAC is all about. And so when you see the stuff about, oh, we have this many ORAC protection units, that's done with chemical reagents in a test tube. That is not a test of what's going on in the human body. And it's only a test on water solubles, not water and fat solubles. Serum ORAC tests both. Serum ORAC tells you what is the level of protection in your blood. That's what we want. That's what we want to know. That's the answer. So, Ambrotose AO, I wish it wasn't called Ambrotose AO, but it's our antioxidant product. And if you want to have the most robust health in the 21st century, we don't live in the 1800s anymore, folks. In the 21st century, you want to take Ambrotose AO as part of your daily health program. Real simple, one capsule twice daily. Easy as can be. So, folks, that's all for this morning's presentation. And I'm turning this back over to Poppy.
Thank you
Or
so
today.
much. Okay. Oh, that was an absolutely amazing call. Thank you so much for going through AO. And we are so lucky to have the best antioxidant supplement in the world. So